Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and my video I did yesterday about Lois Lane and the whole body acceptance thing, I had someone ask a question. They're like, look, I don't like the body acceptance movement either. I'm not backing it, but doesn't fat shaming cause fat people to become more depressed and cause them to overeat more? I mean, I hear a lot of them say that. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, this is one of those things that it's hard to talk about in the fitness community. We should almost call it the aesthetics anti-fitness community online. But it's hard to talk about here because this particular community oftentimes has extremely delusional ideas about what's fat versus healthy. Meaning usually people who are at a healthy body fat that a doctor would say, hey, that's the healthy range, is considered a fat fuck on the internet. So, it's kind of hard to talk to this community about it sometimes. But when we're going to talk about general health, this is what we're talking about, because this whole community pushes people in the other direction to get unhealthily lean. That's almost as bad as being obese. But that's a whole different topic. When we're talking about fat acceptance, fat shaming, all of that stuff, what people need to understand, it's important for obese people to love themselves, but I can tell you this much. If they love themselves, no one who truly loves themselves is going to overeat until they're 80 to 100 pounds overweight in terms of body fat. No one is going to gain 100 pounds of body fat who loves themselves. All right? And I'm not saying various medical conditions don't contribute. We know they do, but they don't change energy balance. Meaning, yes, there are women who have ovarian problems. There are people who have insulin resistance problems. But those don't make you gain 50 pounds of fat without overeating to get there. And that's what people need to understand. And they'll claim that all day long. Sorry, we know that. That's not how human biology works. They can make you overeat easier, though. And the overeating aspect is really what you're dealing with some of those conditions. But it's not people's thyroid. It's not necessarily just polyovarian cystic issues and things like that. Those are factors, but those are factors that generally push you in the direction of overeating. That's actually what happens biologically. But what we're talking about is people who don't actually love themselves. And that's the thing. If you notice in Lois Lane's video, she admitted that she knew that she was following a cycle of self-destruction. And all those years of body positive stuff hasn't helped her. Yeah, she lost 80 pounds at one time, but she never got outside of the morbidly obese range. She never got down to the point of where she was within 50 pounds of a healthy body fat. Never at any point in her YouTube with all of that. This stuff doesn't work. And people need to understand, when we're talking about fat shaming and cultural levels of fat shaming, it actually works very, very well in a lot of societies. Look at a country like Japan. They have access to just as much food as we do. Their obesity rates are very, very low unless they're a sumo wrestler. And it's because there is a cultural shift towards that. And here's the thing. People who say that they overate because other people called them fat, it made them want to overeat more. All right, let me explain how this works. As someone who has, at 2 different points in my life, for 2 separate sets of reasons, gained enormous amounts of body fat and then lost 80 to 100 pounds, I can tell you that's bullshit. You know why people say that? Because they don't like people calling them out on being fat. And so therefore, if they can come up with an excuse to say, hey, that just makes me want to overeat more. No, it fucking doesn't. You want to overeat more because you have an insane appetite, or you're depressed, or have other things going on. Or because you hate yourself. There's some self-loathing going on. Or you're feeling sorry for yourself all the time. That's the reason you overeat. It has nothing to do with other people calling you fat. And I'm saying that as someone who has been there. That's a bullshit cop-out, because you don't like people telling you that you're fat and that it's unhealthy. You don't like to hear it, so therefore you blame that is the reason you overeat. That's a complete cop-out when people say that. And that is from someone who has been fat twice. First time it was shortly after high school. I gained a bunch of weight very, very quickly and then had to lose it. And then later, when I was medically sick and then stuck in bed, I gained 100 pounds. Actually, not even 100. 100 pounds of fat because I lost an enormous amount of muscle because I had to quit lifting weights. I went from benching 400 and squatting 550 while weighing like 215 to 220 up to a sedentary 275. Now, that's only 55, 60 pounds of body weight, but you figure I lost 30 pounds or more of muscle. So I gained 100 pounds of fat and then had to lose it. But it was because I was depressed and hating myself because I had medical issues that put me in bed and I felt my entire life was over and there was no point even bothering to go on. That's how I felt for a while. And so therefore I overate out of depression. It is no other reason than oftentimes self-loathing or feeling sorry for yourself combined with people who struggle with a high appetite biologically and genetically. There's your cause. For the morbid obesity, it's usually other issues going on. But generally speaking, almost every single person I've ever met who's lost 80 pounds or more, myself included, do you want to know what was the number one driving motivator? Hating the fact that they were fat. Self-loathing of the way their body looked and the way their body felt. That is a trend almost every single one of them have in common. The body acceptance thing doesn't seem to work. Everyone who practices body acceptance stays fat as fuck. Every single one of them. Because they're trying to make excuses to justify their self-destructive behavior instead of accepting the valid criticism of people who care about them, that they are completely destroying their body and completely destroying their health. That being morbidly obese like that is no different than being a heroin addict. All right, it is absurdly self-destructive, addictive behavior that will kill you. That's what it is. There is no difference. There is no difference between being a heroin addict and being someone who's such a food addict that they're 100 pounds obese. Absolutely no difference. Both will kill you very young. Both will destroy your health. Both can cause permanent damage to your body. Both are a sign of self-loathing that's going to require you to accept that what you're doing is terrible, that what you're doing is going to kill you, and that you have to do something about it. That what you are doing is actually a very, very bad thing. And people shouldn't feel good about doing a bad thing. They have to understand that what they're doing is a bad, self-destructive thing. And until they can accept that and hate that, they're not going to change. And it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with a drug addict or whether you're dealing with someone who is extremely morbidly obese. Until they hate what they have done to themselves, until they hate what they have done to themselves and hate their behavior and hate the results of it, they're not going to change. And there's a difference between loving yourself and hating what you have done to yourself. Meaning a body ravaged by heroin or a body ravaged by excessive overeating, you have to hate that, or you're never going to change. Because if you just love and accept it as part of who you are, why should you change? And that is the prevailing thing I've seen repeatedly with the fat acceptance movement. Everyone who joins the fat acceptance movement or promotes this body acceptance thing is still morbidly obese a year or two after they do it. Every single one of them. People who successfully lose weight hate their fat. They realize that it is killing them, that it's terrible. They're ashamed of it. That's the people who actually make a change. And there's a big difference between someone giving you a hard time because they care about you versus random people on the internet. And that's the thing that needs to be thrown out. People on the internet seem to think, oh, well, because that works, that justifies me going and attacking someone online. No, it doesn't. You attacking someone online makes you a psycho fuck. It makes you a sociopath or a psychopath. That's actually what it makes you. And you're using the internet because you can do it anonymously and you can hide and be a psychofuck. And no one will know how sick you really are because you can do it from secret and attack someone. Attack someone you see as weak. All right, that actually means that you're a fucking sicko, that you probably need to seek psychiatric help. What I'm talking about is people who come from a place of genuine compassion. Right now, it's a little different if someone comes to someone like that's channel or page and says, hey, you're really morbidly obese. I think you're pretty. I like what you do, but this is killing you. Please make a change. That would be different than the way people go about it on the internet. And you do see some of that, though. But the thing is, it's usually people who know the person who actually care about them as a person. You want to see the people who are the most motivated, and you hear repeated stories. Tons of people who have lost 100 or more pounds all say that someone they cared about, or a bunch of people they cared about, mocked them about their weight to some extent, to the point where they felt embarrassed, but they knew deep down or that these were people who cared about them. When it is people who you know genuinely like you and care about you who are doing it, their opinion actually matters. No one gives a shit about random strangers, but people who you respect or who you love or who you care about, their opinion matters. And that has been found repeatedly in people. There's even been some studies done on that people who successfully lost the weight I don't mean people who are in the process still, people who successfully lost the weight. Large numbers of them had a really good friend or a mother or a brother or sister who gave them a hard time about the weight, and they know it was for their own good. And that's a big difference. Big difference between just randomness and people doing it for their own good. But the social mocking aspect of it is a component. And now people will say, well, we don't need to add to that. There's already a social stigma. I agree. I'm not saying we need to add to the social stigma. The social stigma is already there. The problem is that we're going the other direction because obesity is becoming so prevalent due to being sedentary, terrible food choices, the foods that we have available, that the social stigma is going to start weaning off, and it is starting to some extent because extreme obesity is becoming more commonplace. People are becoming desensitized to it, and that's not a good thing because we should never become desensitized to extremely self-destructive, unhealthy behavior that not only hurts that person, it hurts everyone they love, and it even hurts the taxpayer to some extent as a result of the medical issues that it result from it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.